If you look at what's actually happened, we've adopted a system that was unsustainable. Budgets are made in 4-year cycles. Labor's budget, as they went out of government, did not have any money for the school lunch program in 2025, 2026 or any year subsequent. So the first thing we needed to do was find $340 million, either extra tax, cut spending $340 million elsewhere, or find a way to do this more efficiently. What we've done is we've basically halved the cost by doing it more efficiently. And yes, there's been problems, and we've been very upfront about that. What I think is really interesting is that it's shown two sides of New Zealand. One is to point out at every opportunity, this is terrible, this is wrong, it's a conspiracy, he's trying to deliberately sabotage it. The other is, yep, you know what, it's not what happens to you in life, it's how you deal with it. And each time there's been a problem, we've been upfront, we've solved it, and it's kept getting better.
There have been a lot of problems though, and I'll just do this list once. So, meals have failed to be delivered or have turned up late, interrupting tens of thousands or probably hundreds of thousands of learning hours. Teachers have been forced to scramble and buy pizzas and pies for their students. We've seen the torrent of images of totally unappealing meals, lunches described by students as resembling dog food. Meals with ham have been delivered to kids with halal diets. There have been meals with melted plastic in them, meals that are frozen solid, meals so hot they left one student with serious burns. If this rollout hasn't been deliberately bungled, is this the kind of delivery we should expect from a David Seymour policy?
Well, let me just first answer the deliberate bungled thing again. I mean, it's absolutely true that I campaigned against this policy. I don't think, as far as ACT's concerned, that it should exist, but I'm now in a coalition with two other parties who do want it to continue.
But when it comes to delivery, it's either malice or incompetent.
Yeah, well, in one of life's great ironies, the person who was opposed to the whole program is now responsible, but I'm part of a government. I do government policy to the best of my ability, and I take it very seriously. Now to go through in the first couple of weeks. Since then, we've been achieving 99 to 100% on-time delivery on most days.
This week, just to pick you up on that, this week it was 97.3% of lunches were delivered on time. Now that sounds good, but that across the week is roughly 500,000 lunches. So that means that 13,500 meals were delivered late, which means you have 13,500 students having their learning interrupted by a government policy from a government that said that our number one priority was reading, writing and maths, getting kids focused on learning. 13,500 just this week.
So I can do mental arithmetic too. It means that actually if 13,500 out of 500,000 were late, then 586,500 were delivered on time. We can play this game all day, but look...
But I mean, that's every week this year, right? So that's just this week, 13,500 students have their learning interrupted, and that's every single week this year we've seen late deliveries.
Yeah.
So potentially hundreds of thousands of interrupted learning hours from a government that said it was focused on educational outcomes.
This week you say it was 97.3. That's true. There was one day of interruption on Wednesday when it was only 90% delivered on time. But again, there's two New Zealands, right? There's people who will want to nitpick and say, oh, but you know, I've done the maths, it's 13,500, that's what 3% is, whatever. You're welcome to do that, but I tend to take the other view of life, that it's not what happens, it's how you deal with it. And actually, we've overcome all those problems to get to very high standards of performance. Your second point was around the quality.
You're forgetting the focus though, right? The whole focus of your government was supposed to be getting kids learning, getting kids and educators focused on learning. And if just this week, 13,500 kids have had their learning interrupted by late meals, and you extrapolate that over this year, you're fundamentally undermining your number one priority in education.
I think let's be serious about this for a moment. What this government is doing is revamping the curriculum. We're revamping the qualifications. We're putting a huge amount of support into learning support and making it easier for kids to be supported as they go through their schooling journey. We're going to talk in a moment about what we're doing to totally revamp the over-regulation and red tape around early childhood education. So if you seriously believe, and we're going to talk about charter schools, now if you seriously believe that some school lunches showing up late, in some cases a few minutes late, is really what's holding us back, then I think we're not really having a serious conversation. But
I think actually hundreds of thousands of interrupted learning hours, I think, is a serious issue in the eyes of most New Zealanders. Now, under the previous issue, contractors were responsible for the meal distribution, for the rubbish collection, the recycling and the clean-up. Papatoetoe High School principal told me they're still being left to cover a lot of that stuff themselves. He estimated it's costing them $20,000 to $30,000 a year at the moment. Why?
Well, first of all, let's just go back to your earlier point. I mean, if you're seriously saying that New Zealanders are so helpless that we can't say, look, the meals are going to be a bit late, we'll keep learning, we'll get the meals when they arrive. I mean, I think you underestimate quite
So you get the
how
meals when they arrive, all right? You've got a class of students, meals have arrived, guys. Okay, so we stop learning, we go and have all the meals, okay? You've got are you having this one? You've got a halal meal, okay, we're doing all that, then you've got to clean it all up. That's all that time's lost learning time.
Yeah,
it's not like they're cancelling lunch hour, is it?
That's how lunch works, right? Is that you
Except they're not cancelling lunch hour beforehand. So you've got your lunch hour, your meal doesn't arrive, then you go back to class, you're sitting in class, oh, good news, kids, the meals have arrived, meals all come in, you go through the whole process. I mean, you don't understand how classrooms work if you can't see that that's, at the very least, incredibly distractionary.
Well, I actually believe that people can take initiative and say, we're going to move our lunch hour, for example. That's something that you could do.
Except the schools don't always know that they're going to be late, right?
Well, actually, they do. They know.
They always know if they're going to be late.
They know if they've arrived. So again.
So hang on. So they know if they've arrived, right? So explain to me how a school can move its lunch hour before knowing if it's arrived.
Well, I'm not saying they can. I'm saying that they could be aware because, for example, and this is the two New Zealands, Jack. I mean, on the one hand,
the two New Zealands, the kids who are having their learning interrupted and the kids who aren't.
No, the two New Zealands are the one where we nitpick over tiny details that you don't even know. You're just spitballing that maybe this is what happens. Or there's the one where people can say, look,
we've been speaking to educators all through this week, and I think it's been pretty widely reported, right? Look, let's just we're going to go on forever about the late thing.
Well, no.
But back to that point. So Papatoetoa High School says 20 to 30 grand a year. It's costing them an additional spending coming out of their own operational grant to fund the distribution of meals, the clean up and all of that. How many schools are digging into their own pockets to cover the distribution, the rubbish, the clean up that was previously being comprehensively covered under the last system?
Well, first of all, there is an obligation under the contract for the rubbish to be, or the used meals to be picked up afterwards. They do that twice a week. Second of all, there are some schools that say that it's too difficult to take meals from the school gate and give them to the students, and that's all far too difficult. There's also a lot of schools that are managing that just fine. In any event, the Ministry of Education is giving some compensation to schools in order to do that if they feel that they can't. But once again, the meals show up, provided for free by the taxpayer at the school gate. It's not beyond the wits of people in New Zealand to be able to distribute meals to students who we are told are so hungry that this is the only meal that they're getting, and then take them back.
It costs money though, right? Like if you've got people distributing them, that costs money. And in some cases it's educators, so in some cases it's teachers or principals that should be focusing on education who are distributing.
I've visited schools where, for example, the students have, and this was under the old model, the students have taken the initiative, and it's the students who deliver the meals, and actually they take real pride. It's actually an exercise that they've learned a lot from. Well, in this case, it's
reading, writing and maths.
In this case, the students have managed to organise their time and do something that's taught them a lot about business, sustainability and logistics. Now, I actually see that as a positive thing, but what keeps happening time and again is that we're told that somehow New Zealanders are so helpless and powerless that somehow they can't solve these problems. Actually, I hear a huge amount of feedback from schools who are solving these problems, who are able to get meals from the school gate to the children and back without it being a major disruption. And if we just had a bit more of that spirit, who knows what we might achieve as a country.
So just back to my question, how many schools are topping up the cost of the school lunch program through their operational grant?
So we don't have that information because that would be decisions made by a large number of schools. That information hasn't been assembled in one central place.